Today is all about forming my personal idea about one of the more polarizing houses on the market. Hello, welcome back to Seldom Layoff, and I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is fragrance speed dating with Le Labo. In this video format, I plow through my mountain of samples and discover sets to really learn more about fragrances in the various brands and houses, and just in general to learn more about the fragrance language as a whole. As teased in my intro, today I'm going to be exploring one of the more controversial and polarizing brands in perfumery. Le Labo is a very particular brand. You either love it or hate it, and I have to be completely honest. I hated it without any reason. There was something about the brand, the way it was portrayed, the way people were talking about it, the way people were talking about it on Reddit, which made me immediately dislike it. Maybe because it was popular, maybe because it was expensive, maybe because it came across as a little bit pretentious, but I nonsensically developed this very strong negative bias towards the brand, to the point where I thought that fragrances like Santal 33 and the other ones from the brand were just bad out of principle. It's a very childish sort of emotional response. I completely understand it, and I'm really here to redeem myself. I'm really here to form my own opinion. And to be completely honest, once again, I had the same sort of visceral, childish, emotional response towards other brands. I've had the same sort of response towards Creed. I had the same sort of response towards Roja, towards Clive Christian, all these pretentious-ish luxury brands that really come across as a little bit elitist. And to a degree, I had the same sort of response initially, even towards Frédéric Malle. I'm here to say that a lot of these brands really redeemed themselves, and it's really unfair to have a prejudgmental sort of idea of a brand without really sampling them. And I think that this sort of reaction all comes down to the fact that I don't really like to go for the hype. I don't really like to be told what is good and what I should be liking. And this kind of extends to other medias like music and movies. And this sort of behavior and emotional response has been very consistent throughout my life, to the point where growing up, not only I understand that it's a major flaw, but paradoxically, by hating something, by being intentionally skeptical about something, I'm basically jumping on the opposite bandwagon, the hate wagon. So I'm really here to correct myself. I'm really here to form my own opinions. And although I generally encourage a little bit of skepticism, especially when it's there to really aid the forming of your own ideas, listening to people that are experts in that sector, listening to professionals, really aids the formation of your knowledge base, and it can really help you kickstart your adventure into discovering new medias and just new tastes and new flavors. Going back to the Labo, I have to say that I have zero experience from the house. Today I'm going to be sampling 8 fragrances, which include super popular ones like Santal 33, the Bergamote one, the Thé Noire one, and other ones that I really can't remember. I gathered these samples here and there. I really never sprayed them. I just was waiting for the right time. I initially actually had 2 samples, and I thought that I would present them in a first impression comparison. But sort of out of nowhere, in a trade, I got 5 more samples, and I figured that it would be way more interesting, way more fun to present the brand as a whole in a fragrance speed dating. And if you're new, just to quickly recap how this format works, I'll be spraying all these fragrances on strip, which is a stark difference from my usual doing. I generally like spraying on skin because I really like the way the skin emphasizes certain notes and it really personalizes the fragrance. But again, these are 8 fragrances, sometimes it's even 12, and I really don't have space on skin to sample everything. It would be very confusing and logistically a nightmare. So I'll be spraying them on strip, as I said. I'll be talking about the very first opening and giving my very first impressions only. I will not talk about the dry down. I really want to mimic the idea of walking into a shop, smelling a brand for the first time, getting samples off the strip, and kind of deciding what to buy. And in a shop, you really don't have time, usually, to really sample the dry down, to really form a complete idea. Once I sample the fragrance, I'll also be scoring it on a scale from 1 to 10 based on, again, this very first opening. At the end of the video, then I'll be deciding which of the fragrances I like the most. I'll be spraying that on skin to see if it evolves a little bit, to see if it changes. Some brands are very sensitive to skin versus strip wear. This specific format features the least amount of engagement per fragrance on my side. I just aim to keep it very quick and dirty, very speed dating style. Sometimes the fragrances graduate to the more in-depth formats, being the first impression comparison videos or even the full reviews if I eventually get a bottle. In these formats, I definitely talk about the dry down. I definitely go a little bit more in depth with the brand, with the perfumer, and just everything that involves the inspiration towards the fragrance. As I said, Le Labo is definitely one of those brands that I'm not familiar with. They have a ton of fragrances. Here I have 8. Today we're gonna be smelling Santal 33, we're gonna be smelling Ambrette 9, then we're gonna be smelling Neroli 36, Thé Noire 29, Ylang 49, Bergamote 22, Labdanum 18, and Thé Matcha 26. Again, I'm not really sure if these are popular or not. They have a ton of fragrances. The fragrances from Le Labo seem to be heavily focused on one note in a similar way to Paris Monte Carlo, to Profumo Roma, and to other fragrance brands. I've come to appreciate this approach more and more. There's something very pure, very simple of the perfect representation of an ingredient, which I find incredibly refreshing. It's just such a beautiful break from the usual heavy, hyper-complex fragrances that last forever. And although definitely not my favorite type of fragrances by any stretch of the imagination, I do like experiencing the single ingredients, also because it adds to my database. I really understand what certain ingredients smell like, and it's really nice to smell certain ingredients in isolation. I've gone on to the Le Labo website many times to sort of form an idea about the brand, but although modern and functional, the website itself is very sterile and it doesn't really tell you much about the brand. It feels more focused on selling you fragrances. It's a brand from New York, relatively recent. I'm not really sure what the motive is except for being maybe focused on the natural aspect and the more sustainable aspect of perfumery. They seem to be environmentally focused. They also seem to be heavily against testing on animals, which I'm a huge fan of. But overall, the brand identity, the general presentation comes across as a little bit hypocritical because they're both heavily focused on commercial aspects, but also kind of like leftist, edgy, liberal in a very forced manner. And again, I don't want to go into politics whatsoever. I do support all the concepts, but Le Labo feels a little bit pretentious, a little bit forced in a way. But enough with the blabbering, enough with the intro. Let's get testing, let's get spraying. The first fragrance that I want to sample is Bergamote 22. By the way, these are presented in no particular order, and also I have no idea what the number means. Is it just like a sequential number of how they created the fragrances? Is it a very, again, edgy way to kind of like name a fragrance, or is it tied to the actual concentration or to the ingredient? I don't know. If you know something, leave a comment down below. Anyway, this sample is basically done. I don't know why. I think I have another sample somewhere, but there should be enough to just sample it on strip. Let's give it a good couple sprays. By the way, these samples are absolutely terrible. It's the usual crappy, cheap sample that other so-called luxurious houses also use. This is definitely not a good sign. In any case, let's give it all we got here and let's try to spray the strip. Yeah, this sample is pretty much done, but I think we have enough on here. I think I have another sample of this somewhere, but if I recall correctly, it's one of those ones without the atomizer, which is even more annoying to use. I already transferred the only sample of Thé Matcha into a spray bottle just to make it more consistent. In any case, let's get into the bergamot here to see what this is all about. Well, it's citruses, it's bergamot. It's very, very bright, it's very fresh, it's very mouth-watering. Wow. It's actually mouth-watering. It's very sour. It kind of reminds me off the bat of Bergamasque by Orto Parisi without the musk component, or even something like Profumum Roma's Acquaviva. The Acquaviva by Profumum Roma is actually lemon forward. Bergamasque is clearly bergamot, and it has the same sort of very bright, very effervescent, very powerful, punchy sharpness to it. Very sour and bitter. It comes across as very green, very yellow, very, very saturated. The smell is excellent. It's a beautiful citrus. I really can't fault it for that. Very, very direct, very simple in a way. Maybe all of these fragrances will come across as fairly simple. This is nice. I like it. Again, it's simple, it's predictable, it's a citrus. I feel that this would be a really good fragrance for the summer. I'm not really sure how popular this is. I think it's one of the more popular ones, maybe just after Santal 33. Maybe this is popular because it's very long lasting on skin. As you may know, citrus notes are very, very volatile, very, very fleeting, and even beautiful citrus scents like Peri Monte Carlo, Cedro di Diamante, which is by smell alone one of the best citruses I've ever smelled. That one there is basically like a 1 to 2 hour scent. And Acquaviva by Profumum Roma, to my knowledge, to my experience, is the only very, very long lasting true citrus fragrance out there. Bergamasque is also incredibly long lasting, but that one is aided by that very funky, very sweaty sort of musk note. Again, this smells powerful, it smells long lasting because it comes across as very oily. It has the same sort of very rindy, very green, very oily sort of smell. It's beautiful, it's incredibly well done, very fizzy, very effervescent. As I said, it's mouth-watering. I like this a lot. That being said, if I were to walk in a shop, especially knowing what Le Labo is, knowing that they're focused on one ingredient, this would not necessarily impress me too much. And that is due to the fact that many other citrus forward fragrances have beautiful, beautiful openings. Even very commercial things like Hermès Eau Gevrey has a beautiful opening. The issue being that most citrus fragrances have terrible longevity, and if the longevity is the selling point of Bergamote 22, it's not apparent on strip. It's still super good. I would say that the opening is a strong 7. Let's just start there to see where this goes. Second fragrance to be experienced, Ylang 49. Once again, I have no idea what the name stands for, what the number stands for. Let's give it a couple sprays to see what this is all about. God damn it, these atomizers, they really never cease to disappoint me. Let's try again. Maybe we can get another good spray in. I guess this is enough. This is all we're gonna get. Seriously, those samples are so freaking bad. I really don't understand how a company can just rely on that to showcase their products. Again, rant over, let's go to the fragrance, but I'm really, really annoyed. Very, very potent, wow. Potent, bright, very honey-like, very, very solar. This is a really good representation of Ylang Ylang. It's a very yellow, very dense, very sweet, fruity sort of floral fragrance. I like this a lot. This is really, really cool. Wow. So, I wouldn't say photorealistic because I never really smelled the bouquet of Ylang Ylang, but this is very, very recognizable to me as Ylang Ylang. This is super intense. It's really, really bright. Such a saturated, vivid, colorful image in my head. It kind of reminds me a little bit of honey. It has this pollen type of smell, which is very strong, almost fruity. Super cool. This smells powerful. It smells long lasting. It smells very, very summery. It's very feminine because Ylang Ylang is a little bit more of a feminine floral, but this is really fun. It also has a little bit of a mentholated green aspect, really enhancing the freshness, really enhancing the energetic aspect of this floral. I like this a lot. This is a very good, very powerful punch to the nose in the best possible way. This is really, really eye-opening, very pupil dilating. Wow. The crazy thing is that smelling this gives me a very good idea of where the honey note in Zoologist B is coming from. That one also, again, features a ton of Ylang Ylang, and this is a very clear, identifiable sort of a culprit to that honey note. I really like this. This is super good, really, really impressive. It's one of the best representation of Ylang Ylang that I've ever smelled. Maybe it's an easy representation because the floral is pretty intense, but nonetheless, super impressive, very, very potent, super fun. This is an easy 7.5 out of 10. Third sample is Thé Matcha 26. As I mentioned, this is a sample without the sprayer, and I transferred the liquid within a normal spray bottle, so at least we're gonna get decent sprays because these samples are pretty good. Given how bad the other samples are, for consistency, maybe I should give it just one spray. Yeah, definitely, this is more than enough. Interestingly, I really don't have much experience with the smell of matcha tea. I've obviously had it in the past, but I don't really associate any smell to it. And the thing that comes to mind if I were to think about matcha tea would be something like a green tea smell, very herbaceous. This is nice. It's soft, much, much softer than the Ylang Ylang. It's green, obviously. It's well portraying the color of the matcha tea. It has this weird sort of a balsamic, woody sauna vibe, mixed in with a little bit of a herbaceous green tea. It has a little bit of the smell of mate. I do drink mate occasionally, and it has a very specific smell when you open the bag and you pour it in the cup. It's a very dusty, green, sharp smell, and maybe that is what is giving this balsamic sort of smell. This is very, very subtle. It's elegant, it's clean, it's polite, very, very friendly. I like it, but it's very subtle. Wow. Huge departure from the Ylang Ylang. For some reason, I thought that they would all be so potent and so, I don't know, so saturated and so vivid, but this is way more subtle, despite arguably having a lot more liquid on it due to the better atomizer. I like this. It's very polite. I wouldn't necessarily wear this. I mean, I would, because it's super interesting. It's very directional, but I wouldn't necessarily know where to wear this. I'm not getting any specific sort of vibe except for that very relaxing sauna sort of idea. Maybe this would be a very polite, very timid sort of work scent. Very, very good for the office. It smells modern, it smells clean. It's kind of giving me a little bit of a clean luxury hotel room sort of vibe. This is super non-offensive, very, very likable. If people can't even smell it, it's very, very subtle. Overall, good, not great. Maybe I'm just not a fan of matcha. Maybe if you're a fan of matcha, this will be exactly what you're looking for, exactly your thing. My first impressions, again, being not a fan of matcha, is that this is like a 6.5. Yeah. Good, not great. I'm looking at the samples and I'm sort of intentionally avoiding Santal 33. I'm going to keep that for the end. I have very, very high expectations for that. Apparently, it's a good scent overall. This one here is Labdanum 18. Hopefully the atomizer lives up and it gives us 2 good sprays in order to sample this. So Labdanum or Labdanum is a note that I generally really like. I strongly associate to leather accords. It has this sharp resinous feel, but in the air, this is definitely not coming across as that. This is way, way, way more powdery and way more sweet than I was expecting. It's actually really nice. It has an incredibly photorealistic baby powder sort of smell. It's, again, really, really nice. It has complexity. It's not just a blanket of powder that doesn't say anything. It has a lot of nuance in here. It's sweet, it's fresh, it feels clean, like extremely clean. It doesn't come across as leathery, oily, or dirty, as Labdanum often does in leather accords. This is incredibly surprising. This is really, really good. I really like this. Wow. I'm getting so much incredible depth in here. It's almost shocking. It smells like floral petals, very, very delicate, very furry, very small floral petals mixed in with this sort of woody, earthy, very powdery sweetness. I don't know, it's super nice. I would never pinpoint this to Labdanum whatsoever. I could never associate it to that. Maybe it's the flowers of the Labdanum? I have no idea. This is super surprising. Wow, I'm really impressed by this. I can't really underline how surprised I am. If the longevity is good on this, I'll definitely look into getting a bottle. This is absolutely addicting and amazing. An easy 8 out of 10 at the very, very least. That Labdanum there was so amazing. One of the best first impressions I've got lately that I'm scared that nothing else will live up. This one here is Neroli 36. Fingers crossed that the atomizer works and fingers crossed that it's a decent floral. Good enough. So I kind of knew that this would be potent. Orange blossom, neroli are all notes that are very easy to portray in a way, just because the flower is so incredibly vivid and potent. Kind of like Ylang Ylang, it's not as punchy, not as summery, not as saturated, but it's definitely present. I've also sampled many good orange blossom fragrances, as I mentioned before, my favorite being the Fragonard Fleur d'Oranger, the Parfum version. That is absolutely amazing. This does not come across as unique whatsoever. Not as surprising. Probably if you want to have a Le Labo that is orange blossom paste, this would be an excellent scent. I'm sure that Le Labo did a fantastic job at portraying this ingredient. It's just that it's a fairly common ingredient. It's not too unusual. There's so many Neroli orange blossom fragrances out there that I wouldn't necessarily go to Le Labo for this unless you're a huge fan of the brand. Le Labo fragrances are, by the way, quite expensive where I live. Although we have official Le Labo stores, 50 mLs run for like 240 bucks. I'm not really sure about the US, but for whatever reason, the fragrances seem to be much cheaper in Europe. If you go on to the French website, the fragrances for 50 ml run for 169 or 170 euros, which is a stark difference from the Swiss prices. So again, I would definitely not go that price for a Neroli scent. There's so many other beautiful Neroli-centric scents which actually add a little bit more complexity, add a little bit more nuance. This is beautiful, by all means, don't get me wrong, but if I were to put myself in the head of a person having a little bit more experience in perfume, you definitely would have come across a Neroli scent. This would not impress you too much. Good, not great, 7 out of 10 just because it's well portrayed. Third to last fragrance is Thé Noire. I'm really interested in this. I'm really hyped about this. Apparently it's a very good depiction of black tea. I've heard CG Sense talk about this multiple times, referring to it as one of his favorite fragrances of all time. I'm really curious. Hopefully it lives up. The atomizer, at least on the sample, should be decent. Let's give it a couple sprays. Yeah, works out good. This is another interesting one, definitely to my taste. Very dark. Really good, wow. I'm not a huge tea drinker. This does not necessarily smell like brewed tea, like in a cup. It's way stronger, way more dense than that. If anything, this could be the smell of a more concentrated brewed tea, maybe even something like a tea reduction, if that's even a thing. Kind of smells like a tea that has been left brewing for a very long time. It has this sweet molasses sort of a smell to it. This is super good. Wow. I'm really happy about this. I really like this. It has this earthy component. This is dark, very dense. I'm picturing the color maybe dark brown, or maybe the color that's almost black of wet soil. It also kind of smells like wet soil, kind of like wet leaves. Wow, this is super good. I really like this. This is unusual. It's not necessarily representative of tea, but at the same time, it's also very realistic. This is really good. I could probably wear this, no problem. Despite it being easily identifiable as a tea scent, it still comes across as fairly elegant, fairly put together. Very alluring. One good thing about these Le Labo fragrances is that they're all incredibly unisex just because they're so abstract. They're such a good depiction of the ingredient, and the ingredients are not necessarily masculine or feminine. Anyone can wear this. This one here though leans a little bit more masculine just because of how dark and rich it is. I'm really wondering if someone smelling this would pin it to tea. I'm really curious about that because once you say what it is, it's immediately clear. But before that, this would come across as a balsamic, wet tree bark sort of smell. It has this sweetness, which is super nice, but it's very natural. It smells rooty. It smells like the sweetness that comes from wood, like from the, again, from the molasses, from the syrup, kind of like a very seasoned, very dark, very concentrated maple syrup. It has a little bit of a smoky factor. This is super good. I really like this. If not for that amazing Labdanum, very unique at that. This is easily the best one from the bunch up to now. This is a good 8 out of 10. I'm really impressed. Wow. On to the list of purchases this goes because this is really cool. By the way, if you know anything about the longevity of this, let me know in the comments. I'll definitely be wearing this on skin. But hey, if the video comes out, I'm happy to know your opinion. Super good, 8 out of 10. 2 more to go. As I said, I'm leaving Santal 33 as my last one. Second to last is Ambrette number 9. Ambrette is a little bit of a weird note. I'm not super familiar with it, except for the fact that it's usually referred to as quite animalic. So I'm very curious, actually. Come on, come on. What does this smell like? This smells like something. Wow, this is really unique. It's reminding me of something which I can't put my finger on. This is so weird, I can't pin the smell to anything, but the first image that comes to mind is boiled chestnuts. It has this very sweet, nutty, dense, rich, sort of like tree barky flavor, a little bit green. This is really weird. I like it though. Oh my god, it's triggering my brain in such a specific way. There's something in my memory which is very, very much associated to this smell, but I can't access that location. I can't access that memory cell. Very interesting. This is also another one of those subtle ones. It's definitely more present than the Thé Matcha, but not by much. This is very polite, very intriguing in a way, very alluring. Maybe it's because it's a type of note, it's a type of smell. If you don't identify it specifically, it draws you in just out of sheer curiosity. This is good. This is an objectively good fragrance, I can tell you that. I can tell it by the way it's balanced. It's incredibly well put together. One thing that actually stands out from all these Le Labo samples is that they have a very natural, very alluring sweetness to them. It doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel synthetically added, like an additional added sweetness like a vanilla or a very cheap amber accord. This feels incredibly natural. And this natural aspect to the sweetness is very alluring, very, very addicting. It's like you really want to take it in as, I don't know, like a realistic smell. These all smell incredibly realistic, or rather, instead of using the word realistic, I prefer to use the word believable, because I don't have necessarily a photorealistic image of the ingredients in mind, but somehow they smell very natural and they're kind of tricking my brain into believing that the ingredients actually smell like this. It's a neat trick, let me tell you that. I like this. It's not my favorite because I really can't identify what it is. That is my shortcoming. But overall, it's pretty good. I would say it's a 7 out of 10. Not my favorite, not the best. All right, here we are with the infamous Santal 33, the very polarizing Santal 33. This is an incredibly influential fragrance. It's basically representing modern niche perfumery. They say that New York City smells like this. It's so iconic, it's so identifiable, but at the same time, it's also very, very polarizing. Some people absolutely love this. Some people say it smells like pickles. Myself, I have no idea what to expect, except for maybe a very realistic rendition of sandalwood. Hopefully this does not disappoint. Let's give it a couple sprays and bring it to the nose. Interesting. This is way fresher, way less creamy than I was expecting. Sandalwood is a weird ingredient. Sometimes it comes across as very creamy, very clean. Sometimes it comes across as a little bit salty and fishy to a degree. This is surprisingly fresh. It's lacking that distinct, creamy, almost lactonic, sort of coconutty smoothness. This is way sharper than I was expecting. It's way more watery, way more fresh. I can totally see how people say that this smells like pickle water or that smells like pickles in general, because it has this very green sharpness to it. The woody component in here is much more subdued than I thought it would be. I thought it would be a typical sandalwood scent along the lines of Matière Première's Santal Austral, or even to an extent Blamage by Nasomatto, which, by the way, I compared those two in a first impression comparison video. This is very, very different. Very abstract. I'm not really sure if I didn't know what this was, if I were to smell it, if I would pin it to sandalwood. I mean, there is a little bit of a clear pink sort of distinction to it. It has a very pink, very light pink sort of image. Maybe it's in my head, maybe I'm biased by the marketing, maybe I'm biased by the expectations, but this is really interesting. It's a way more abstract version of what I was thinking it would be. The other ones are fairly directional in depiction of that ingredient. Even the tea one was dark, it was molasses-like, it was a little bit earthy, but it was clearly tea, especially when told that it was tea. This is probably the most abstract that I smelled till now. I mean, it is sandalwood, but it's a very different sandalwood. I'm also associating sandalwood to the Amouage SSS collection. Those have a very common base note. And that sandalwood in there is very realistic, very woody, but also very, very creamy. It's very intense. This is light and sharp, very light and sharp. It almost feels dewy to a degree with a light freshness. There's no saltiness in here. It doesn't smell briny, like a salty water brine or anything like that, but there's a very defined, very identifiable yet subtle sort of acidity. It comes across as kind of like a vinaigrette from a salad for whatever reason. Really, really interesting. This is super unique. I was definitely not expecting this whatsoever. I'm really surprised. It's also not very powerful. It's way more subtle than the Ylang, which was by far the most powerful. It's way more subtle than the Thé Noire. This is more in line of the one that I said, the Ambrette, maybe the last one that I smelled. It's not in your face. It's polite by nature, but it's such a difficult scent to describe. It's such a weird scent. I like this, but I'm not as impressed as the other ones. This one does not come across as the very specific, very vivid image of that ingredient. It's also a little bit desaturated in vividness in my brain, maybe because it's so subtle. I'm not really sure how this develops on skin, but it does smell like this would really compensate skin chemistry, and it would really pick up on the skin oil sort of facet and would really develop on skin. So actually, I'm kind of leaning towards spraying this on skin just because it's so interesting, and just because, again, I'm also obviously biased by how popular it is. I kind of want to smell it on skin. I think I will spray this on skin, but first impressions, if I were to walk in a Le Labo shop without knowing what Santal 33 is, without specifically searching for that scent, without any preconceived bias, I would probably say that this is like a 7-ish, 7.5-ish out of 10. It's cool, it's unique, but it's not too surprising, not too jaw-dropping in any way. I would say this is like a 7.2 out of 10. Good. But again, first impressions, there's a lot better out there, especially that Labdanum. That was absolutely amazing. Actually, I was expecting Santal 33 to smell a lot more like that, a lot more powdery, a lot more creamy, a lot more deep and nuanced. This one here is, again, very, very strange. 7.2 out of 10. Okay, we're done with the initial sampling. As I said, despite it not being my favorite by any stretch of the imagination, I still want to spray Santal 33 on my skin just because it smells like something that needs heat, needs skin chemistry to fully develop, and just because I'm really curious about what the hype is about. Because on the strip, not that impressive. Unique, yes. A little bit weird, yes, but not super impressive. So let's go all in. Let's give it 3 to 4 sprays. I'm really curious here. While we wait, this was an interesting experience. As I said, I was very, very keen to form my own opinion about Le Labo and to really not jump onto any bandwagon, either positive or negative. Overall, the brand has surprised me in a good way. I feel that the fragrances are super cool. They're very natural smelling. They're very realistic smelling, or rather, as I said, believable smelling. The Labdanum 19 really, really impressed me. Super deep, really, really nuanced. I really like that one. Also, the black tea one, Thé Noire, was also absolutely amazing. I feel that the brand has a lot of potential, a lot to offer, but at that asking price, not super sure. 230 bucks for 50 ml is steep. It's really, really steep. And these are basically impossible to find at discounters. You have to either go secondhand or just bite the bullet and get them at retail. I guess that getting them at retail is sort of part of the experience because you also get the personalized label. Overall, cool brand. I like the fragrances. I like this approach. I wouldn't necessarily spend this sort of money, but I do appreciate very simple, straight to the point fragrances. It all comes down though to longevity. If these fragrances last 2 hours, I'm not really into that. If instead they're very high quality, very long lasting fragrances, I could be into that, and I could be looking at purchasing maybe a couple of them, who knows. In any case, feel free to point out in the comments down below any Labo fragrance that I might have missed that is super good. As I said, these samples just kind of came to me randomly. The only ones that I bought personally were Santal 33 and Thé Noire 29. I was planning to feature them in a first impression comparison, but here we are in a fragrance speed dating. But enough beating around the bush, let's see what Santal 33 smells like on my skin. This is really unexpected, really surprising actually. I was not expecting this at all. The fragrance has definitely developed, it has gained a lot of body, but not in the way I was expecting. I was expecting the fragrance to really warm up because my skin chemistry does that. I was expecting the fragrance to really pull out a lot of that sandalwood creaminess, a lot of that smooth, furry, lactonic sort of sandalwood vibes, a lot more woody vibes maybe, but this is... It smells even more like pickle water. It smells even more sharp, even more acidic. It has a little bit of sweetness in there, but the sweetness is almost jarring now because it smells foreign. It smells foreign to this very acidic, still very fresh and dewy scent. It smells very unique, but I can't picture how this could be perceived as sexy or appealing. Maybe it just doesn't work on my skin, but it's really, really strange. There's a very strong, strange metallic acidity that has developed on my skin, almost like a chemical reaction and not in a good way. It smells foreign. It smells like it's not supposed to be on my skin. It also is still very, very subtle, kind of like a skin scent. I thought that it would develop and radiate and start pumping out a lot more sweetness. This is not sweet at all. This is way, way different from something like Santal Austral by Matière Première. That is, again, more in line of something like the Labdanum 19. Amazing scent, by the way. I really want to spray that later. This is really surprising. I really don't know what to say about this. I'm kind of disappointed, but also I'm kind of thinking that there has to be something to this. There has to be some explanation. For it to be so popular and appreciated, especially at the price, there has to be something to it. I'm just not getting it. I might just go all in and empty the whole sample on myself this evening to really just embrace it and see what this is all about. But I'm not expecting much. I'm not expecting that much transition. Maybe in the deep dry down. Maybe the longevity is like super good in the skin scent phase. The deepest of dry down is really, really appealing and nice. I don't know, I'm just incredibly puzzled. If I were to judge Le Labo just from this, I would be very disappointed, especially knowing how much hype this scent carries. Very interesting nonetheless. I'm happy I smelled this. I'm happy I smelled all the Le Labo. I will be going through the samples, the one that work at least, and forming an even better opinion. I really do think that Labdanum 19 and the Thé Noire are the best ones out there, at least from the ones I smelled. Those are really compelling, and I'll be wearing those maybe to the office even tomorrow. This one here is, I don't know. Maybe I'll report in the comments down below after I really douse myself in it, really after I embrace it, and maybe my opinion has changed. I guess that's it for this video. I don't really know what to say. This last sampling and wearing of Santal 33 has left me very much questioning stuff, very stunned, very paralyzed. I don't really have any more words in my mouth, other than the fact that Le Labo, despite coming across as a little bit pretentious and not very friendly towards the user, I still think that they deserve to be smelled, to be sampled, at the very least to form your own opinion, not just blindly jump on any bandwagon, positive or negative. I do think that they're an interesting brand. The way they present their products, the way they present their unique notes, they're very realistic, and again, they might be worth your time. So if you have a chance to go into a boutique for Le Labo, go in there, sample some scents, be open-minded as always. I always encourage that, but still be a little bit skeptical. Don't just eat up all the marketing, don't just eat up all the hype or hate for a brand. Form your own opinions, keep getting your nose out there, keep getting your nose out of your comfort zone, and keep exploring the beautiful world of fragrance. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. Many more fun videos to come as per usual. See you in the next one, and cheers.